Hello, friend. Come sit a spell. While the evening cool settles over the block, the flag across the street moves just enough to whisper, and somebody's beagle decides the hydrangeas need a last inspection. I want to ask you something you might have chalked up to just getting older. Do your knees talk to you when you stand from a chair? Not a shout, but a quiet grit that makes you reach for the table edge. Have you noticed rings feel tighter after a long day on your feet? Or your favorite jar now needs a rubber band to open? Do you wake with a stiffness that loosens as coffee warms your hands, only to return when you sit too long after dinner? And here's the one many folks don't see coming. Have you lost half an inch in height that you jokingly blame on the dryer? Or noticed your back prefers the car seat more than it used to? Those little moments might be your joints and bones holding up a sign that says, "Feed me wisely and move me kindly." Tonight, I want to talk about 8 foods that carry collagen or help your body build it. How a squeeze of vitamin C turns that scaffold from flimsy into strong. How to keep gout from crashing the party by managing purines with a steady hand. And how a simple anti-inflammatory plate can support the way you walk, lift, garden, and hug the people you love. Let's start on a kitchen counter you recognize. Collagen is the rope inside a tug of war. It's the strong cord that anchors skin, cartilage, ligaments, and the lattice inside bone. When we're young, our bodies braid that rope quickly and repair it overnight. With time, the braiding slows unless we hand over the right threads. You don't need a trophy case diet to do that. You need a few ordinary foods in the rotation and a splash of vitamin C to tighten the weave. Here's the friendly truth. Collagen from the plate is less about miracle absorption and more about delivering the building blocks amino acids, like glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, plus the foreman nutrients like vitamin C that tell your cells to use them. Think of the foods as lumber and the vitamin C as the carpenter with the plan. The first and easiest food to bring in lives right beside the tuna cans at the store, canned salmon with the skin and soft bones still inside. That tin holds 3 gifts for joints and bones. The skin carries collagen, the bones melt into the fish and donate calcium that your skeleton can bank. The salmon's own fat brings omega. 3 seconds, that calm joint irritation, after a day of stairs or yard work. Mash it with lemon and pepper and a spoon of Greek yogurt for lunch, or form little cakes with oats and onion and sizzle them in a skillet until the edges crisp. If you live with gout, you might have side-eyed fish by now. You're right to know that some fish run higher in purines, which can nudge uric acid up in sensitive folks. Salmon sits in the moderate lane. A sensible portion once or twice a week usually plays nicely, especially when your plate also carries low-fat dairy and vegetables. Portions and patterns matter more than any single can. Second, there's a humble hero you've likely cooked for decades without naming it. Chicken on the bone. Thighs and drumsticks bring more connective tissue than boneless breasts, and the skin and cartilage contribute collagen when you simmer a pot of soup or pull meat from a roasted bird. That broth that gels a little in the fridge? Collagen at work. Drop carrots, celery, onion, a bay leaf, and peppercorns into a pot with a rotisserie carcass and water. Let it go low and slow while you putter. Strain and chill. The fat cap lifts like a lid, and what's left will set softly ready for a week of joint-friendly lunches that taste like a Sunday you earned. If you manage gout, don't panic about broth. The purines concentrate most in thick, reduced stocks. Keep it light, skip boiling it down to a syrup, and use a regular soup strength rather than a chef's glaze. It's the difference between a comfort and a trigger. Third, don't overlook cuts of beef that your grandmother swore by when money was tight and flavor mattered. Shank, chuck roast, and oxtail not every week. Not in steakhouse slabs, but in slow-cooked, vegetable-heavy stews that let connective tissue melt into tenderness. That melting brings gelatin, a cousin of collagen, into the liquid where it coats your noodles or barley with gloss and gives your joints a quiet nod. A sensible portion on a bed of carrots, onions, and mushrooms, with a side of bitter greens brightened by lemon, leans into anti-inflammatory eating without asking you to swear off pleasure. If gout lives at your house, these richer cuts can sit in the sometimes column. Make the broth lighter, keep portions modest, and balance the week with fish, beans if they agree with you. and plenty of plants. Folks with gout often find low-fat dairy supports lower uric acid. A cup of milk or a side of yogurt on stew night is more than old-fashioned. It's smart. Fourth, there's an ingredient hiding in plain sight in your baking aisle: plain gelatin. Not the neon dessert with sugar, but the unflavored powder. Stir a spoon into warm soups or stews as they finish, and you'll add body your mouth recognizes from restaurant soups, while delivering the amino acids your cartilage needs to mend its frayed edges. Some folks stir it into a nightly mug of tea. Others bloom it in a little cool water and melt it into broth. If you're watching Purines for gout, gelatin has had most of its nucleic acids washed away. It behaves friendlier than organ meats or anchovies. Again, modest is the key, and a kitchen based on many colors, not one hero. Fifth, and this may surprise you, the soft connective bits in the foods you already like: tendons in a beef shin stew, the gristly tip of a chicken wing, the skin that crisps under a broiler carry collagen into your bowl. I'm not telling you to chase crackling every night. I'm asking you not to fear a little texture when it appears in a homemade meal that otherwise respects your heart and your sugar. Collagen doesn't live in the leanest slices. It lives where structure holds things together. Honor that in a stew once a week, and let the rest of your days be lighter. Sixth, eggs bring something different to the table. They don't contain collagen in the whey bone, in meats do, but they deliver proline and glycine, two of the amino acids your body stitches into collagen, plus sulfur to help cross-link the rope. The egg's membrane, the thin film you peel away from a shell, has its own collagen and joint-friendly compounds. You can't eat that easily unless it's ground into a supplement, and we're staying at the table tonight, not the pill aisle, but an omelette folded over finely shredded cabbage or peppers, or a pot of vegetable soup finished with ribbons of whisked egg, hands your cells tools they know how to use. Seventh, dairy, especially the plain, low-fat kind, earns its spot for bones and joints, even if it doesn't carry collagen itself. Milk, yogurt, and kefir bring calcium and protein, and in many folks they lower uric acid a notch, a mercy if gout knocks on your door. When your stew is rich, let the side be a cucumber yogurt salad or a glass of milk. When breakfast is eggs, let a spoon of cottage cheese ride alongside tomatoes and herbs. Think of dairy as the steady friend who doesn't need the spotlight but shows up on moving day. Eighth, and always the vitamin C crew. You can eat all the collagen you like. Without vitamin C, you won't knit that cord well. Vitamin C is the enzyme's assistant that turns floppy strands into tight triple helices, the springy cables inside cartilage and tendon. The foods here are the kind you buy without a lecture. Bell peppers, sweet as fruit, oranges and clementines, strawberries, kiwi, broccoli florets that squeak under your teeth, kale and collards that shine under a hot pan with a squeeze of lemon. Put color on half the plate and trust that you're bathing your joints' little repair teams in the cofactor they need. Bonus: plants bring polyphenols and fiber that cool joint irritation and help weight drift in the right direction, which may do more for knee pain than any pill you've heard of. You'll notice I didn't send you to a boutique. Nothing here is a silver bullet. Everything here is ordinary food used on purpose. The most important shift is toward a weekly pattern that your joints can predict. 2 or 3 meals where collagen or gelatin touches the plate, daily color that carries vitamin C, and many nights of lighter, plant-forward cooking that calms the background hiss of inflammation. You won't wake on Thursday feeling 19. You may stand from a chair on Saturday without bracing a hand on the table. Let me put these on a porch, through a pair of neighbors you may recognize. Alma is 76, a retired nurse who still folds hospital corners on her sheets. Her thumbs hurt when she peels oranges, and stares complain by the 5th step. She's not dramatic. She just moves slower. She lives with mild osteoarthritis and a bone scan last year that put her into osteopenia, not osteoporosis, but a reminder. Her dinners had become whatever is easy, and easy often meant salty and beige. We changed the story in small scenes. A rotisserie chicken became 2 pots. The meat folded into tacos with cabbage and lime the first night. The bones simmered gently into broth that made vegetable soup the second. A tin of canned salmon appeared at lunch once a week. Peppers and broccoli started showing up under lemon and garlic because she put the produce drawer on eye level. She added a daily walk between dinner and the evening news, not to burn calories, but to ask her cartilage to soak up the broth of joint fluid the way a sponge loves a sink. 6 weeks later, she didn't call it a miracle. She called it less ache on Tuesdays. Across the alley, Frank is 72, a retired mail carrier with calves that still look like they know what a hill island. He had 2 gout flares last year, a hot, red, angry big toe that made him hobble and mutter. He also loves chicken wings and the occasional steak, and he took pride in a stock he boiled to half its volume on Sundays. We kept his identity and changed his clock. Wings moved to once a month and traded their sugary sauce for a lemon pepper rub with a quick, hot roast. Steak night shrank. 4 ounces on a plate, surrounded by roasted peppers, onions, and a pile of collard greens with lemon. The stock stopped reducing to a glaze. He learned to love a lighter broth that still sat softly in the fridge. The real hero? He started eating a bowl of plain yogurt most days and swapped the second beer for sparkling water and lime. Uric acid trended down. His gout pills stayed in the cabinet, and he began to talk about the long game, the way only a man who used to walk 30,000 steps a day can. While we're in the real world, let's tie these foods to the habits that can either help them sing or drown them out. Coffee stays. It just leaves the evening alone so sleep can file the repairs your joints started all day. Screens are fine. They just stop being the last light, because blue glow at midnight makes pain feel louder and your midnight snack more persuasive. Big, late dinners can become smaller, earlier suppers, because heavy salt and starch at 8 makes hands puffy at 10 and rings tight at dawn. Alcohol moderation matters for both gout and bone. Beer tends to be the worst actor on uric acid. Spirits trail it. Wine in small amounts may be friendlier, but still asks for water beside it, and a hard stop at 1 glass, especially if sleep is precious. Seasons matter. Winter begs for stews and braises. Answer the call and then answer your bones with a walk in a bright store aisle if sidewalks are slick. Your calves pumping like the quiet pistons that return fluid from ankles to knees. Summer calls for grill smoke and tomato plates. You answer with salmon, peppers, lemon, and the moderate portions that keep gout from RSVPing. I'd be a poor neighbor if I didn't name the whispers and the red flags. Whispers are the invitations to adjust. Morning stiffness that lasts more than a half hour but warms with movement. Knees that mutter on stairs but quiet on flat ground. Fingers that catch when you open a jar. A big toe that twinges after a salty feast. A constellation of little bruises around your shins when you've been on a water pill and forgot that water and potassium-rich foods need to share the day. Those respond to the kitchen and the sidewalk. Red flags are different. A swollen, hot, very painful joint that comes on suddenly, especially with fever or if you feel unwell, is not a walk-it-off situation. Gout can do this, yes, but so can a joint infection, and both deserve urgent care today. New back pain after a small twist that leaves you shorter or tender over the spine could be a vertebral compression fracture. Your clinician needs to hear about it. Hip pain after a fall needs eyes, hands, and sometimes x-rays, not an ice pack and denial. Calf swelling and warmth paired with breathlessness is never a wait-and-see go now, because prevention beats repair. Bring your life to the clinic in a way that helps us help you. If joints complain or you're worried about bone, sensible tests exist and they're not punishments, they're headlights. A DEXA scan takes a few minutes and tells the truth about bone density. It helps decide whether you need only food and movement or whether medicine should join. A basic metabolic panel looks at kidney function because kidneys handle calcium and uric acid. If gout is in the picture, a uric acid level and a conversation about thresholds makes sense. If hands and knees ache most mornings, a CRP or ESR simple markers of inflammation can help aim treatment. They don't diagnose by themselves, but they tell the weather. Vitamin D is the quiet helper of bone and muscle. A blood level once or twice a year aims a safe dose. Sometimes we check ferritin or B12 if fatigue rides along, because when you're tired you sit more, and sitting more makes joints cranky. You don't need to memorize any of that. You need to arrive with a notebook that says in nouns and verbs what you've done for 2 weeks. Salmon cakes Monday, soup Tuesday, walk most evenings, yogurt most days, wine on Friday only, rings looser this week. That sentence opens better doors than any internet printout ever will. You might be wondering where weight fits in without turning this into a lecture. Extra weight asks knees to carry a backpack they never signed up for. Each step loads the joint with a multiplied force. Losing even 5 to 10 pounds can feel like changing the weather in there. The good news is you don't chase it directly with hunger. You let it follow from a plate that tastes like the foods we've been talking about. Protein at breakfast steadies the early hours. Colour at lunch keeps afternoons calm. A reasonable dinner that ends by 7 gives your body a chance to dip the night's inflammation and blood pressure the way healthy nights do. The 8 collagen-rich foods and their friends don't belong to a fad. They belong to a routine that happens on Tuesdays when no one is watching. I'll give you a day that behaves not perfect, just useful. Morning light finds your eyes through a kitchen window while you stand for 60 honest seconds, because even winter keeps a promise that morning will be morning. Breakfast is modest and American. 2 eggs folded over finely shredded cabbage with pepper, or Greek yogurt with walnuts and berries. Coffee lives there, not an hour earlier. So you're fed when you sip. Late morning you fill a pot without fanfare. Bones from last night's chicken, carrots, celery, onion, peppercorns, water. Heat low enough that nothing boils angrily. Lunch is a bowl from that pot with a handful of chopped peppers and a squeeze of lemon. You nap if you need to. You walk if you can. Afternoon finds you doing a small thing that uses your hands, a letter, a plant, a drawer, and noticing your fingers weren't as bossy today. Dinner is salmon cakes with lemon and a mound of roasted broccoli that squeaks under garlic. A glass of milk sits there. The wine waits for Friday, if you've agreed with yourself to treat sleep like a paycheck. You stretch your calves at the sink, because those 2 ropes of muscle on the back of your legs are the pumps that return fluid and calm knees. Your phone sleeps in the kitchen. A lamp says goodnight. The house goes dark in the nice way, and your joints file the day's repairs while you dream about tomatoes in August, even if it's February. Let me also say a word to folks who love anchovies, sardines, and shellfish, the traditional collagen and bones friends. They're delicious. They bring calcium if you eat the little bones. And they do good work, except when they don't. For some people with gout, those are reliable tripwires. You don't have to break up forever. You can choose smaller portions, less often, and never back-to-back with a beer and a steak. Or you can let them live in the family recipe book and make their cousins' salmon, trout, cod your weeknight company. Vitamin C quietly lowers uric acid, a notch for many. That bowl of strawberries with yogurt is not just handsome, it's helpful. Cherries and cherry juice have fans and some evidence. If you love them and they love you back, keep them. But in our kitchen, we celebrate them without turning them into unicorns. If budget leans on you, know this. Store-brand yogurt, canned salmon, whole chicken, carrots, onions, cabbage, frozen broccoli, lemons, oats, and a bag of walnuts in halves and pieces will do more for your joints than any capsule with a glossy label. If cooking feels heavy, assemble instead. A canned salmon bowl with lemon and pepper, a side of peppers and cucumbers, and a glass of milk is a joint-friendly lunch you can make while the dog is deciding which patch of lawn is worthy. If knives are not your friend anymore, buy pre-cut vegetables when they're on sale. They don't judge you. If you walk with a cane or a rollator, let evening strolls be measured in mailboxes, not miles. The key is the squeeze. Release rhythm of calf muscle, not a personal record. If you live in an apartment with a hallway that smells faintly of soup and furniture polish, walk it at the hour it's quiet and bright. A cart at the superstore can be a handrail and a chance to see something green in February. You know I'm going to end where I began. Your house can help, and so can your plate. The 8 foods aren't a club to join. They're a short guest list to rotate. Canned salmon with bones and skin. Chicken on the bone, turned into broth that never gets angry. Slow-cooked stews with connective tissue that melt into kindness once in a while. Plain gelatin as a cook's trick and a cartilage gift. The odd gristly tip you don't trim away in a home-cooked meal. Eggs that lend their proline and glycine to the cause. Low-fat dairy that steadies bones and uric acid. And a parade of vitamin C bright plants that hold up the scaffolding from the inside. The rest is modest portions, a sensible clock, a lamp instead of a screen at bedtime, and a walk that counts because it exists. If this sounded less like a lecture and more like a neighbor talking recipes with a stethoscope in her pocket, that's how I meant it. Share this with the friend whose knees say no before the day has even started. With the brother who jokes his gout toe has its own personality. With the sister who misses being tall enough to reach the top shelf without a stool. Tap like if these scenes look like your kitchen. Subscribe so the next Porch to Table chapter about simple, doable steps for healthy aging and senior wellness finds you without you having to chase it. Prevention beats repair because prevention tastes like dinner and feels like a walk at dusk. Your joints and bones notice every Tuesday you keep. Think of cartilage as the quiet carpet between bones, a smooth layer that lets your knees slide without complaint and your fingers curl around a coffee mug without drama. That carpet is mostly collagen. Your body can weave new fibers from the scraps you feed it, but the loom slows with age and speeds up again when you hand over the right threads in the right room at the right hour. That is the why behind everything you heard on the porch. The stew that sets softly in the refrigerator is not just a nice texture, it's proof that gelatin drifted out of connective tissue and into the liquid. The lemon you squeeze on roasted peppers is not just for taste. Vitamin C flips on the enzyme that cross-links collagen strands so they behave like rope, not yarn. When dinner happens on time and the phone sleeps in the kitchen, your brain drops you into deeper sleep, and deeper sleep releases a little pulse of growth hormone that tells cells, repair what you can. That set of ordinary moves is what turns a kitchen into a workshop for aching joints and thinning bone. Collagen is built the way a neighborhood is built, piece by piece, with workers who need both materials and a foreman. The materials are amino acids, like glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. Your body can make some, and it also prefers receiving them ready, made from broths, bone, in chicken, slow-cooked shank, or even plain gelatin. The foreman is vitamin C, which adds tiny chemical tags that stiffen the new fibers so they resist daily friction. Without vitamin C, the whole project sags. That's why a bowl of vegetable soup made with a light chicken broth does double duty. Broth delivers the building blocks. Vegetables deliver the switch that turns on construction. If you're a coffee-first person who skips color until dinner, the tape measure slides the wrong direction. Joints don't get their cue until late. Put peppers or an orange at lunch and you correct the clock without a single lecture. Now layer in the joints that hurt not because they're dry but because they're irritated. Inflammation is your body's burglar alarm. When it's too loud for too long, it turns a squeak into a grind. High salt, late night, screen-lit evenings are gasoline on that alarm. Salt pulls water into the bloodstream and out to tissues. Morning hands feel puffy. Rings leave marks, knees feel thick. Late dinners tug your sugar higher at the hour your cells respond worst to insulin. Blood vessels don't get their normal midnight rest, which makes pain feel louder and repair slower. Screens tell your brain it's noon. Melatonin stays shy. You slide into shallow sleep, that's all toss and no fix. This is why a Tuesday night roast chicken, a sheet pan of broccoli and peppers with lemon, a glass of water, and a lamp as the last light can do more for senior health than anything in a box. The timing and the plate change the chemistry that sets the background volume on your joints. Gout has its own story, and understanding it keeps the rest of the plan workable. Uric acid is a natural breakdown product from purines, which live in all our cells. Most of us make and excrete it without fanfare. Some of us make more, excrete less, or both. And crystals form in joints where the blood runs cooler and slower, like the big toe. Food is not the only driver, but it's a meaningful lever. Organ meats, certain shellfish, anchovies, and beer load, the purine train. Dehydration and big salted dinners make the track sticky. The point of naming purines is not to exile joy. It's to keep gout from stealing weeks you'd rather spend walking the sidewalk that runs past the big maple. Moderate fish, like salmon, light broths instead of syrupy reductions, a glass of milk or plain yogurt most days, and lemon-splashed vegetables shift uric acid gently in the right direction. Vitamin C helps here too, a small nudge supported by the kind of food you already know how to make. If you live with gout and get a flare, food can help reduce how often and how hard it hits, but it cannot replace a clinician's plan. We're building a friendly house around the medicine, not against it. You can see the why in small scenes that play out in American kitchens. A pot on Sunday steams with chicken bones, carrots, celery, onion, and peppercorns, The cook keeps the heat low so the liquid ripples but never roars. Monday, the broth wobbles in the fridge like a promised gelatin doing its job. That bowl becomes Tuesday's lunch with a pile of chopped peppers and a squeeze of lemon. Vitamin C arrives at the same moment as the amino acids, and the foreman gets to work. Midweek, a can of salmon with skin and small bones is mashed with yogurt, lemon, and pepper and pan-seared into cakes. A salad of oranges and fennel or just plain broccoli under garlic backs it up. Friday, if steak shows up, it's smaller and surrounded by greens with lemon instead of a salt-heavy sauce, and beer gives way to sparkling water with lime. Saturday's leftovers become a vegetable soup, with a bloom of unflavoured gelatin stirred in at the end for body and for cartilage's sake. This is not a diet. It's a string of dinners that make the workshop hum without asking you to live like a saint. Subtle signs, what I call whispers, help you steer before trouble speaks up. Morning stiffness that melts with a hot shower and 10 minutes of movement is a whisper that cartilage needs circulation and your plate could be doing more to feed it. A knee that grumbles on stairs but not on level ground says the cushion is thinner but still cooperative. That's the moment to say yes to a daily walk and to the bowl that delivers both collagen building blocks and the vitamin that stitches them. Hands that feel puffy at dawn and looser by lunch suggest the salt in last night's takeout was louder than it needed to be. Peel a clementine with breakfast, drink a glass of water, and move dinner earlier and lighter tonight. A toe that twinges the morning after a beer and wings game night is a postcard from uric acid. Answer it with dairy, citrus, water, a simpler supper, and a plan to make game night an exception instead of a pattern. Red flags are different. A joint that's suddenly hot, red, swollen, and very painful, especially if you feel ill or have a fever, needs eyes and hands today, not ice and hope. Gout can do that, but so can an infection, and waiting on either can injure a joint that still has many miles left in it. A spine that finds you an inch shorter after a minor twist or bump, with tenderness right over a vertebra, asks for a clinician's evaluation for a compression fracture. Quiet, common, and worth treating. A hip that takes your breath after a fall is not a sleep-it-off injury. Bone is less forgiving when the calendar has more birthdays, and imaging protects you from the worst stories. A calf that swells and warms with an ache after a long, still day, paired with chest tightness or breathlessness, belongs to emergency care. Calm is not waiting. Calm is picking the door that fixes the problem and walking through it. Bring a small notebook to the kitchen and to the clinic so your why becomes everyone's map. For 2 weeks, write in nouns. Lunch, broth plus peppers plus lemon. Dinner, salmon cakes, broccoli, water. Snacks, orange, walnuts. Be honest about the nights that go loud. Wings plus beer. Late TV? Not because you're confessing, but because those nights teach you more about your knees and your big toe than any online article. Add how you slept, how stiff morning felt, whether rings slid more easily, whether a toe threatened. If you have a home blood pressure cuff, jot the evening and morning readings. Sleep that does its work quietly lowers pressure at night. And a non-dipping pattern is one more whisper to move dinner earlier, salt lower, screens away. At your visit, that little diary paired with a story of how you moved and what flared aims tests the way a good address aims the mail. Tests exist to shine a light without drama. A DEXA scan is a painless snapshot of bone density. If the picture shows thinning, your clinician will decide whether the kitchen and sidewalk are enough or whether medicine should join the team. A uric acid level tells you the terrain if gout has been a visitor. Remember that one number is less useful than the pattern and the goal your clinician sets. If knees, hands, and morning feel angry more days than not, a CRP or ESR can tally the background hiss of inflammation. It won't tell the whole story, but it adds a paragraph. Vitamin D lives in bone, muscle, and mood territory. A level once or twice a year chooses a safe dose for your age and kidneys rather than the guesswork of big bottles on sale. Kidney function on a simple blood test matters when you navigate uric acid, calcium, and certain pain medicines. It also protects you from overdoing broths and supplements you don't need. A complete blood count can quietly explain fatigue that makes you sit more and ache more. If red cells are low, the fix lives in sunlight, iron, B12, and a conversation, not in scolding yourself for not walking more. The daily why talks to your calendar. Coffee sits beside breakfast, not alone at dawn, because a fed morning lets joints bathe in the nutrients they need when circulation is best. Screens go to bed before you because melatonin is a carpenter's flashlight at night. You want it on. Big dinners that used to swagger at 8 become reasonable suppers at 6. Your body is more insulin, resistant in the evening, and simple, early plates mean calmer nights and less swelling at sunrise. Alcohol moderation protects both bone and joints. Heavy drinking thins, bone, and beer in particular, tips uric acid the wrong way. A single glass of wine with water beside it, and a hard stop at one, is a place many older bodies can live without sending an RSVP to pain. Seasons shape the menu without changing the mechanism. Winter asks for stews, make them bright with citrus and light on reductions, and walk an aisle after to pump joint fluid where it belongs. Summer drips with tomatoes and peppers, pair them with salmon, yogurt, lemon, and a walk as the porch light pulls moths in lazy circles. Sidewalks are free clinics. Your calves are pumps. 10 minutes is a language your cartilage speaks. Medication timing folds into the logic so your kitchen and your pillbox agree. If you take a diuretic and feel stiff and puffy by night, ask whether moving the dose earlier makes evenings kinder. Drink your water when the sun is up, not when you're turning out the lamp. If you take a proton pump inhibitor for reflux, your stomach may extract less B12 from food. You don't stop the medicine without a plan, but you do ask how to keep doses minimal and separate, and whether your B12 needs a check so muscle and bone get the help they expect. If you live with gout and start a uric acid, lowering medicine, flares can paradoxically pop up early. That's not failure, it's turbulence, and it's a good moment to keep dairy daily, alcohol modest, and broth light while the medicine is finding your steady state. Pain relievers have rules too. NSAIDs help acutely but nudge blood pressure and stomachs. Acetaminophen is gentler on the stomach but asks you to respect the label. Both deserve a clinician's attention if you need them most days. None of this is meant to scare you off pills you need. It's meant to connect the kitchen and the medicine cabinet with the same plain rope of sense. The last piece of this why is weight, and we treat it like a joint issue because at Island Knees see several times your body weight with each step. 5 to 10 pounds lost is a weather change they notice. You don't white-knuckle your way there with emptiness at dinner. You arrive by feeding protein earlier in the day, colour at lunch, and a plate at night that tastes like dinner but ends the evening instead of starting a second shift. Yogurt with fruit replaces dessert on most nights. Broth-based soups take the stage a few times a week. Salmon shows up, a portion you can see the edges of, surrounded by citrus, bright vegetables. Walks are for joints and sleep, not penance. That is how to live longer after 70 without making life smaller. Your Tuesday changes shape without losing flavour. And your knees. Thank you in the language of stairs you don't dread. If you want a single picture to carry to the grocery store, let it be this. A cart with canned salmon, a whole chicken, carrots, onions, celery, bell peppers, lemons, oranges, a carton of plain yogurt, a bag of frozen broccoli, oats, and walnuts in halves and pieces. A week that cooks from those basics on purpose. A broth that never gets angry on the stove. Vegetables that squeak under garlic and lemon. A steak that shrank and became more interesting surrounded by greens. Coffee that minds the clock. A phone that sleeps in the kitchen so you can do the body's night work in the dark. A notebook with nouns and times you can show a clinician who wants to help you keep walking. None of it is heroic. All of it is aimed. Share the why with the friend who tapes his ring finger because it swells. With the sister whose big toe has a personality and a calendar. With the neighbour who jokes about being shorter after laundry and laughs to keep from worrying. If it sounded like a neighbour with a stethoscope talking recipes, good. That's all this is. Prevention over repair, one supper at a time, in a house you recognise. Your joints and bones don't need promises. They need a plan you can repeat when no one is watching. A plan that tastes like dinner and ends with a walk under a sky that's doing its job. Personal plans start in the house you actually live in, the one with a chair that fits your hips, a hallway you can claim after dinner, a budget that likes store brands, a winter that leans on the windows, and a pillbox that has its own opinions. Joints and bones don't ask you to become someone else. They ask for the version of you that moves most days in ways that don't hurt, eats in ways that reduce the background hiss of inflammation, and lines up small kitchen choices. So cartilage has raw materials and bone has reasons to stay dense. When we tailor, we don't chase perfection. We remove friction until the plan slides into your week and stays there. If your knees complain before you finish your first cup of coffee, you're not going to prove anything to them at dawn by doing heroics. You'll coax them. The first minutes belong to gentle circulation and the little pumps in your calves that send fluid out of ankles and up through one-way doors. Sit tall in a sturdy chair you trust. Rock through your feet like you're rolling a marble under each arch, heel down, ball of foot, toes. Then reverse slow enough that your shins feel the message and your calves wake without protest. Straighten one knee until your heel floats. Toes flexed toward your face. Hold just long enough to feel your thigh say hello, then switch. Place your hands on the armrests and stand once. Sit once. No flop, no strain, letting your hips and thighs do the work, while your hands only spot you. If a cane lives beside your chair, use it for the first stand. If a rollator is your steady bench, set the brakes and let it give you confidence. Those tiny acts aren't about burning calories. They're plumbing and wiring, more blood to the lighting and cushioning inside your joints, more signal to the nerve pathways that make balance feel natural again. Your cartilage is like a sponge that soaks up nutrient-rich joint fluid only when pressure changes. Gentle repetitions are the squeeze and release that feed it. Apartments and winter demand creativity, not excuses. Hallways become your boulevard at the hour they're quiet and bright. Walk to the far exit and back with one hand trailing the wall like you're claiming it. Turn slowly so your hips feel safe. Let your rollator be a moving park bench brakes on whenever you want to pause. If sidewalks glare with ice, the opening lap at a big box store is therapy. The cart is a rail. The lights are a mood lifter. And the floor is honest. 10 minutes at an aisle, aiming pace after supper, is enough to change the chemistry of your evening. Post-meal movement asks muscles to soak up sugar without a big insulin demand, which lowers the inflammatory echo chamber that makes knees feel older than they are. If wheels are your mode, circulation still listens. Point and flex your ankles like a conductor tapping time. Circle them slowly each direction. Straighten one knee at a time and hold. Then twist gently through your mid-back as if you're wringing out a towel. Blood follows motion, and blood brings the vitamins and amino acids we're sending from your plate. Breakfast is where collagen building and bone keeping begin for most people, especially if supper tends to be smaller and earlier. If eggs are friendly and gout isn't knocking, fold 2 over a pan of finely shredded cabbage or peppers, softened in a lick of olive oil and pepper. You just slipped proline and glycine, the building blocks for collagen, into a morning habit that tastes like a diner but acts like a clinic. If your stomach turns its nose up at eggs, reach for store-brand Greek yogurt in a plain tub. Stir in a spoon of peanut butter and scatter a few walnuts and thawed frozen berries. That bowl brings the protein your cartilage and bones crave, the vitamin C that cross-links collagen, and a gentle dose of omega-3 seconds that hush the joint's background chatter. If dairy doesn't love you, unsweetened soy yogurt does the same job for your joints, and a splash of calcium-fortified soy milk in a quick smoothie keeps bones in the conversation. If chewing is the barrier because dentures are fussy or jaw joints have opinions, whip cottage cheese in the blender with a pinch of cinnamon until it becomes as smooth as frosting. Spread it on cucumber coins later, or eat it by the spoon when you want something that behaves like a treat and acts like a repair kit. Gout sits at the same table, so the menu gets small edits rather than big exiles. If your big toe has a temper, make fish your friend in the mellow lane. Salmon cakes mashed with lemon, pepper, and a spoon of yogurt. Pan seared until the edges smell like a roadside shack in Maine. Cod roasted on peppers and onions with a squeeze of lemon instead of anchovies that tempt fate. Shrimp as an occasional guest, not a weekly routine. Keep broths light, no simmering down to a syrup that concentrates purines, and pair them with citrus and crunchy vegetables. Low-fat dairy shows up most days because it tends to nudge uric acid down. Beer picks fights with uric acid more than wine does, and wine still has an early curfew and a 1-glass limit if sleep matters, which it does for pain. You don't need commandments. You need patterns. Water on the table, lemon on vegetables, fish you can see the edges of, broth that stays friendly, and nights that don't swagger with salt. Bargain kitchens can absolutely do this. A cart that holds a whole chicken, canned salmon with bones and skin, plain yogurt, cottage cheese, a bag of frozen broccoli, a head of cabbage, carrots, onions, bell peppers in whatever color was on sale, a sack of oranges, a couple of lemons, oats, and walnuts in halves and pieces is a joint and bone menu disguised as groceries. Sunday's chicken becomes tacos with cabbage and lime the first night, and a pot of low, lazy broth the second. Monday's broth becomes vegetable soup with peppers and lemons squeezed at the table. Tuesday's canned salmon becomes little golden cakes in a skillet and a bowl of broccoli that squeaks under garlic. Wednesday's omelettes or tofu scrambles folded over vegetables. Thursday is a stew built on chuck roast, cut into modest cubes that melts into tenderness without turning into a salt festival. Friday, if wine belongs to you, is one glass beside a plate that still shows its colors. Saturday is leftovers with a quick cucumber yogurt salad that tastes like a neighbor taught it to you. None of those meals sound like a clinic. They are. Senior nutrition happens most easily when the food tastes like home. Safety travels with personalization because your joints live on your calendar and your medicine list. If you take a diuretic in the morning and feel stiff and puffy by night, it might be because you coasted dry all day. Front-load water when the sun is up, not at 10 p.m., and bring potassium-rich plants, peppers, oranges, greens into the daylight hours, so muscles get what they need to contract and release. If a proton pump inhibitor keeps reflux from bullying, you know that long courses sometimes lower your ability to pull B12 from food. That matters because muscles need B12 to fire and balance needs muscles that listen. Don't guess, bring it up. A simple blood test can aim a small supplement if needed, and your reflux pill can live at the smallest effective dose at a time of day that doesn't elbow your nutrients. If steroids have ever been necessary for your lungs or your joints, remember that they thin bone with long use. Your clinician may talk about protecting bone on purpose with medicine, but your kitchen still matters protein at breakfast, calcium and vitamin D showing up in food, and weight-bearing minutes most days. If you start or adjust a uric acid, lowering medicine for gout, paradoxical flares sometimes appear early while the body rebalances. That moment is not failure, it's turbulence. And it's an even better week to keep alcohol modest, broth light, and dairy, and citrus steady while you and your clinician steer through. Some red flags deserve doors, not diaries. A single joint that becomes suddenly hot, angry red, and exquisitely painful, especially if you feel feverish needs urgent care today. Because gout is not the only cause. Joint infection can masquerade and steals joint surfaces if you let it. A back that cracks after a small twist and leaves you tender over 1.5 inch. Shorter needs a call, because vertebral compression fractures are common, sneaky, and treatable. A hip that takes your breath after a fall isn't a sleep it off and see, it's eyes, hands, and often pictures. A calf that swells and warms after a long car ride plus new breathlessness is never a wait and see. Calm doesn't mean patience. Calm means moving toward the right help without drama. On ordinary days, the signs are whispers, and they answer to practical shifts. Morning stiffness that takes more than a half hour to melt asks for a little movement before coffee, and a real breakfast with protein and colour. Hands that wear rings tighter after takeout want a quieter, earlier dinner tomorrow and water on the table. Knees that mutter on stairs but behave on flats ask for more flats first, and a gradual return to stairs when quadriceps feel less like bystanders. A big toe that grumbles the morning after beer and wings suggests the pattern, not the toe is the problem. Make those nights rarer, swap beer for sparkling water with lime, and invite yogurt into the week. Prevention beats repair because prevention is made of boring things that work. Light facing your eyes for a minute at breakfast, so your sleep files repair at night. Coffee beside food so you don't chase sugar all day. A short walk after supper because sidewalks and aisles are the cheapest joint clinic in the country. Because this plan has to live with money and taste. Give yourself options you'll actually choose. If you hate cottage cheese, whip it smooth with a pinch of salt and lemon zest and let it become a spread you don't recognize from 1979. If Greek yogurt tastes too tangy, stir in peanut butter or almond butter until it reads as dessert without paying sugar's price. If gelatin sounds odd, think like a cook. Bloom a teaspoon in cool water and slide it into soup at the end. The mouthfeel tells you it's there, even if your brain doesn't, and your cartilage will accept the delivery. If sardines remind you of lunch pails you didn't love, stop forcing and choose the easier cousin canned salmon with lemon and pepper and let it carry the day. If meat feels better on Sundays than Tuesdays, save chuck roast for Sundays and make Tuesdays about beans if they agree with you. If beans don't fight lean on eggs or tofu scrambles and vegetables under lemon. Nothing here requires purity. Everything here requires repeatability. Tests and simple check-ins are part of personalization because they keep guesswork out of the kitchen. If bone is the worry, a DEXA takes minutes and tells you if the sidewalk and the kitchen are enough or whether a medicine should join the team. If a medicine does, your kitchen still matters because you'll want calcium from food, vitamin D in the right dose, and protein at meals to give that medicine something to work with. If joints stay loud more days than not, a CRP or ESR can measure the background inflammation. Your clinician will place that number next to your story and exam rather than use it as a verdict. If gout is a player, a uric acid level sets a target. Food won't replace allopurinol or febuxostat when you need them, but food will make their job easier. Basic labs that peak at kidney function and electrolytes are mundane and powerful. Kidneys handle uric acid and calcium, and knowing how they're doing helps tailor advice. Vitamin D is the quiet helper that keeps bone and muscle listening. A yearly level lets you avoid both the too little that leaves bone wanting and the too much that doesn't earn its keep. Your medication list deserves choreography. If you take a morning water pill, put the biggest water and most of your salt at breakfast and lunch so night can be quiet. If your pain reliever is an NSAID most days of the week, your blood pressure and stomach deserve a conversation and a plan. Maybe different timing, maybe a change. Maybe the kitchen does more and the bottle does less. Don't guess alone. If your clinician adds a bone medicine like a bisphosphonate, the instructions matter. Take it on an empty stomach with a tall glass of water and stay upright for a while so your esophagus is happy. That's not fussy. That's how the medicine gets to bone where it belongs. If you take thyroid medicine, keep it away from your calcium-rich foods and supplements for a few hours so both can behave. That small separation is the difference between a good number on paper and a good day in your knees and hips. When the plan fits, it survives a bad Wednesday. Picture it. You're tired. Traffic was rude. Supper is the rotisserie chicken on the counter and 2 plastic tubs of vegetables someone else chopped. Perfect. Pull the meat. Toss it with lemon, pepper, and a handful of chopped peppers. Slide broccoli onto a sheet pan with garlic until it squeaks. Pour yourself a glass of water that looks like you meant it, and let the wine sit this one out. Put the phone to bed in the kitchen because your joints repair best in the dark, not the blue glow. Take the walk you can mailbox to mailbox, aisle to aisle, and let your calves send your evening upstairs. If you want dessert, make it 2 bites with someone you love, and then tell yourself the story of being the kind of person who ends the night with a mug of tea and a bowl that helps you tomorrow climb the porch steps without thinking about it. The routine holds because you built it from objects in your house and foods in your store, not from rules you resent. If all of this sounds suspiciously like healthy aging rather than a miracle, that's because senior health rarely lives in a headline. It lives in a chair you use like a tool, a hallway you walk like a path, a plate that keeps color loud and salt civil, a fish cake that tastes like a diner and acts like a therapy session, a broth that jiggles without becoming a reduction, a cup of yogurt that shows up for your uric acid and your bones, a lemon that turns the key on collagen's lock. It lives in a lamp that ends the day so your body can file repairs while you sleep. It lives in a 2-week notebook written in nouns that you bring to a clinician who wants to help and can because you handed over a map. There's one more scene I want you to carry, because it turns all this advice into something you can feel. After dinner, you set the ramekin and the lemon half near the stove while the sheet pan gives off one last sigh of garlic and heat. You put your palm on the counter and lean your heel back until your calf lengthens and your knee stops plotting against you. You take the hallway at a human pace, counting door frames, feeling the quiet tug in your thighs that says blood is moving like it should. You sit where you can see a bit of sky and squeeze lemon onto the broccoli you roasted until it squeaked. Taste the brightness and know that the same molecule is turning on a little enzyme in your cartilage right now. You sleep because your house is dark when it should be, and you wake because your knees didn't negotiate their first step like a labor contract. That's the outcome we're chasing. Ordinary days that feel like yours because small, repeatable choices add up to quieter joints and steadier bones. Draw a simple line through the next 10 days, like chalk across a driveway, and imagine each square as a small scene, not a project. You don't change everything at once. You tilt the house and the plate so gravity works for you. The joints notice when dinner shows up on time, when lemon lands like sunlight on broccoli, when the soup has body without turning into a salty reduction, when your calves do their quiet pump after supper, when the phone sleeps in the kitchen, and when your last sip belongs to water. Collagen does its mending at a pace set by routine, not by heroics. Bone adds tiny beads of strength when meals are steady, and the day holds your weight for a few minutes at a time. This is how prevention over repair stops being a slogan and becomes Tuesday. On the first evening, make the kitchen look like it's on your side. The cart you pushed home gave you the basics without drama. A whole chicken, 2 cans of salmon with skin and soft bones, plain yogurt, cottage cheese, a bag of frozen broccoli, a cabbage with a tight green brain, carrots, onions, bell peppers, a sack of oranges, 2 lemons, oats, walnuts in halves and pieces. You set the chicken to roast while the oven hums a friendly note. Carrots and onions keep it company. When the meat rests, you pull what you need for tacos and slide the bones into a pot with water, carrot tops, celery nubs, onion ends, peppercorns, and a bay leaf. The heat stays low, never angry. You don't chase the stock into a glaze. You're not a restaurant. You're feeding joints that like a light broth that will set softly in the fridge. You wash your hands, stretch your calves at the counter, and take the hallway once with the mail in your pocket because the night is more cooperative when your calves have done their job. The phone sleeps in the kitchen. The lamp earns the last switch. You go to bed not virtuous, just organized. Morning brings its honest light through the window. You sit long enough for blood pressure and gravity to shake hands. Breakfast is protein and color. An omelette folded over finely shredded cabbage and peppers with pepper and a sip of coffee that comes with food, not before it. If coffee used to be your morning's exclamation point, it becomes punctuation that minds the clock. The last cup belongs to early afternoon. Lunch is the broth that wobbled in the fridge, now warmed with chopped peppers and a squeeze of lemon. The lemon's vitamin C flips on the little enzyme that stitches collagen strands tighter, so cartilage behaves like the smooth carpet it wants to be. Supper is roast chicken tacos with cabbage and lime, and you end the evening with a short walk and a glass of water. None of it feels like medicine, which is why you'll keep it. On day 2, canned salmon takes a bow. You mash it with lemon, pepper, a spoon of yogurt, and a shake of onion you softened in a pan. Pat the mixture into small cakes and let them kiss the skillet until the edges brown. Broccoli roasts until it squeaks under garlic, and an orange shares the plate like a little sundae. If gout has visited you before, you notice what's different. Salmon sits in the moderate lane for purines, yogurt tends to nudge uric acid down, and water walks beside the plate instead of beer. A bowl of plain yogurt at lunch or for dessert leaves its mark quietly, and your big toe behaves like it has better things to do than lecture you tomorrow morning. After dinner, you walk a slow 10 minutes hallway, driveway, store aisle because muscle asks sugar to come in without shouting for insulin, and when evening chemistry is quiet, joints sleep easier. On day 3, you turn the roast chicken bones into a second pot of soup, this time finished with a teaspoon of unflavored gelatin bloomed in cool water and stirred in at the end. It's a cook's trick first body. Gloss. The way a spoon feels like it's passing through silk, and a cartilage gift second. You pile chopped peppers and a handful of spinach in the bowl, squeeze lemon like rain, and call it lunch. Dinner is simpler for the sake of sanity. Eggs folded into a frittata with onions and peppers, a side of cucumber, yogurt salad cut with lemon zest. You keep wine for Friday because sleep repairs better when the evening ends with a lamp and a glass of water. Coffee had its say at noon and went quiet so melatonin can clock in after dusk. These are not rules to resent. Their gears you aligned so the machine runs with a gentler hum. Day 4 is stew night, built on chuck roast cut into cubes smaller than the old days. You brown them with patience. Let onions collapse. Add carrots and mushrooms. Tuck in a bay leaf and a ribbon of orange zest. You pour water and a little light broth, not salted stock, and you don't boil it into a brag. You let it barely move. The fragrance is the kind that makes a neighbor pause on the sidewalk, and the result is fork-tender pieces held together by the memory of connective tissue that melted into the liquid and lent its gelatin. Greens and lemon come to the table, along with a glass of milk, because bones like calcium and joints like dairy's quiet uric acid nudge. If steak usually meant a beer, tonight the sparkle in the glass comes from water with a squeeze of lime. You sleep because you didn't ask your vessels to carry salt like a backpack to bed. On day 5, you make a bargain with time. You pull the rotisserie trick because you are human and you are allowed. Meat becomes chicken salad with yogurt, pepper, and lemon. Cabbage and carrots get shaved thin and slicked with vinegar. You put it on a plate that shows its colors. The bones head to the pot again, not to chase perfection, but to bend grocery money into 2 more lunches. If gout lives in the background, you keep the broth light and the citrus high and see how your toe treats you. You take the mall lap or the store aisle lap because winter pressed its face to your windows and the cart makes a good handrail. 10 minutes is the unit you measure in. The price is just your presence. Joints do better when they get that rhythm most days, rather than a hero day once a week. Day 6 is for fish again, but a different cousin. Cod roasted over onions and peppers with a squeeze of lemon and a handful of capers if salt isn't scolding you. The oven does all the work. The side is a pan of collard greens with lemon, pepper, and a little garlic. The plate tastes like someone cooked with a memory of a coastal town without forcing you to live there. If wine belongs to you, this is the night you pour 1 glass and bring a carafe of water as its chaperone. The second glass tries to talk you into a later bedtime and a louder toe. You decline. The phone sleeps in the kitchen because the last light your brain trusts is from a lamp. Sleep pries its fingers into the night's repairs, and bones lay down a few more beads of density because you ask them to hold you up after dinner, even for a short walk. Day 7 turns toward comfort without surrender. You make barley soup with vegetables and a modest handful of beef shank pieces, letting the connective bits kiss the simmer and lend their gift to the broth. A bowl of cherries in the freezer becomes a microwave-warm spoonful over plain yogurt after supper because you enjoy them, and because some people's toes like that choice. You stretch calves at the sink because you can feel how a heel down and a knee soft takes the argument out of your ankles and sends fluid north. Rings, which felt tight last week after takeout, slide a little easier in the morning. That's not magic. That's salt minding its manners because you cooked twice this week and ate earlier on purpose. The 8th day is for a small steak if that's your identity. You buy a piece that would have looked small to your 30-year-old self, and you cut it on a board surrounded by bell peppers, onions, and a bowl of greens that get dressed with lemon and olive oil. You season with pepper and restraint. Beer stays in the store because uric acid listens to beer more than it listens to sense. You eat the steak you can see the edges of, and you enjoy it while refusing the old pile of fries. You tell yourself the truth. Flavor carries farther on a plate that shows color. Your big toe, not the steak, calls the next day's meeting to order, and the meeting adjourns without incident. Day 9 is the night you shine a light in the pantry and pull out the plain gelatin again for a pot of vegetable soup, this time with cabbage and carrots, onions and peppers, and a last-minute shower of chopped parsley with lemon. The gelatin gives the spoon weight that feels like a good diner on a road trip. You finish with a bowl of cottage cheese, whipped smooth with a pinch of cinnamon and lemon zest. You spread it on cucumber coins because your hands like the act of arranging small circles. You take a hallway lap with your rollator even if you don't need it, and practice setting the brakes, standing tall, and walking 3 doors without looking at your feet. Balance is a practice your body remembers when you stage it. You sleep because nothing argued with the plan. On day 10, the worst day shows up to test you, as it always does. The appointment ran long, a neighbor needed a ride, the grocery store felt like a circus, and you are both tired and tempted to resign. The house you staged rescues you. The broth is in a jar. The canned salmon is in the pantry. The frozen broccoli is a tray away from done. You make salmon cakes because your hands know the motion. Steam a bowl of broccoli in the microwave if the oven feels like too much, and squeeze lemon like punctuation. You pour water, you put the phone in the kitchen, you take a hallway lap, and then stretch your calves at the sink. You go to bed with the feeling of a person who was not glorious but was faithful. The joints and bones are more impressed by faithful than by glorious. The rhythm that holds all of this happens after supper. Clear the plate, fill the glass, and stand at the sink with one heel pushed back and the other knee soft until you feel the long rope from calf to hamstring unwind. Change sides like a person who is not in a hurry. Put your palm on the counter and let your body lean into the length of itself as if you could make room between vertebrae by asking nicely. Walk the hallway once, maybe twice, trailing your hand along the wall for balance and information. Put the phone on its charger in the kitchen and let a lamp end your day. That sequence is not a ritual for ritual's sake. It is the timing your nervous system uses to mute the alarm, the signal your vessels use to dip pressure at night, the choreography your cartilage uses to soak up joint fluid, the permission your bones use to lay down another set of beads along the struts in your hips and spine. The evening is a part of the plan, not an afterthought. You protect it the way a farmer protects dusk. Coffee, wine, and salt don't need excommunication. They need good direction. Coffee stays beside food and gets an early curfew. If your hands shake or your sleep thins, bring that last cup closer to lunch and let the afternoon be water. Wine can live as a story, not a soundtrack. One glass with dinner, water at its elbow, and a hard stop at 1 keeps joints from waking you with hot opinions at 2. Salt belongs in your fingers, not in a factory. When you cook, let garlic, lemon, pepper, vinegar, smoked paprika, and herbs take the solo, and let salt sing harmony. When you eat out, notice how restaurants have trained your tongue to accept their volume. Let the next day be quieter. Puffed hands in the morning and sock dents on your shins are not moral failings, they're notes from last night's band. You can choose a different playlist. A day in this life looks unremarkable in the best way. Morning light finds your eyes. You sit long enough to let the room and your pressure agree. You stand without flinching. Breakfast tastes like a diner without acting like one. Eggs folded over cabbage and peppers, or yogurt with walnuts and berries. You drink your coffee like a grown-up, who remembers that coffee has a clock. Midday finds you at a table with soup that sets softly in the fridge, lemon landing like a bright answer on chopped peppers. Afternoon asks for a small task, watering the plants, writing a note, folding towels because hands like being useful. The hallway or the sidewalk takes you for 10 minutes after supper. You see a neighbor's porch light click on. You hear a dog tell the night it's on watch. You count 2 mailboxes farther than yesterday. Dinner belongs to simple. Salmon cakes, broccoli with garlic, a glass of milk to keep bones in the conversation. A lamp ends the day. You stretch calves at the sink. You sleep, not because you earned it, but because you made it likely. You'll be tempted to ask for guarantees. There aren't any, and you knew that before we met on this porch. There are better odds, and they are earned cheaply by repetition. The soft, jiggly promise in a jar of broth. The way lemon and peppers turn on collagen's cross-links with the flourish of a cook, not a chemist. The hush that arrives in a knee when weight drifts down a few pounds because dinner shrank and vegetables got the front row. The quiet that comes to a toe because beer gave way to water on most nights, and yogurt became a habit. The odd pleasure of soup that coats a spoon and rings that don't cling. The sense that stares are a conversation rather than a negotiation. None of that appears with a single heroic meal, and none of it disappears if a single Friday goes loud. The line you draw through 10 days matters more than any dot on that line. When the calendar flips forward, you keep the tools where your hand expects them. A jar of walnuts, where you'll see them first, not last. A lemon in a small dish that looks like it belongs there. Yogurt on the front shelf, not tucked behind leftovers. Cans of salmon next to the opener. A notebook with nouns instead of judgments. Shoes with honest soles by the door. A chair that faces a window because morning light is medicine without a label. You teach your house what you want it to do at 7 in the evening and at 7 in the morning, and it behaves because you placed the props. There is nothing exotic here, which is why it works. You don't need pouches of promise or powders that cost more than groceries. You need broth that never gets mad, vegetables that squeak, fish cakes that brown, eggs that fold, dairy that shows up quietly, citrus that does more than garnish, salt that plays rhythm guitar, and a walk that proves you're still made of moving parts. You need hands that know how to stretch a calf, a phone that knows where its bed is, and a lamp that means good night. You need a line of 10 days and the humor to start again if one of them stomps through and slams the door. If any of these scenes look like your house, if you could smell the roasting broccoli or hear the skillet's edge turning salmon cakes golden, if you could feel the sink under your palm during that long calf stretch, if you could see the jar of broth wobble in the fridge and grin at its quiet promise. Share this with the person who stands slowly from a chair and blames the dryer for shrinking them, with the neighbor whose toe has a temper and a nickname, with the sister who cooks like a genius on Sundays, but gets tired on Wednesdays and needs permission to assemble instead. Like this if your kitchen looks like a place where health can happen without fanfare. Subscribe if you want more porch-to-table habits that hold up joints and bones and let the rest of your life keep its space. The point is not to live forever. It's to live as yourself on ordinary days. That's what this chalk line buys you. Fewer negotiations with your body and more time to notice the hydrangeas and the sound the beagle makes when nobody's looking.